Now, in this interview, we have the famed and sometimes controversial investor and overall thinker in the gold, silver commodities and overall investing. That's Doug Casey. Now, Doug did just come out with a new book. It's called The Assassin. If you have not seen it, fantastic book. He's got a series. So that just came out. In the link right there down below, you'll see if you're looking for a good read right now. I did see some comments back from people on Twitter saying they were in the middle of reading it. So that's in the link down below. We got International Man, which is his website where he has fantastic writings on a term, International Man, talks politics, investing. And then just heard that he's now got a little YouTube channel he's starting called Doug's Take. So we got all three of those. So make sure you hit the like button on either side. And we're going to be talking to Doug about investing, the world, and we're going to be asking him a couple important questions right now about gold too.
Okay, Jake, that's great. We can talk about life, the universe, and everything if you want. And I really appreciate your mentioning Assassin. I'll hold it up. When you have a new book, you're supposed to hold it up so people can see it. And I've got to say that Assassin is actually a fantastic read. I'm very proud of it. I've been reading it myself, and I'm a very discriminating reader. And I said to myself, this actually is a really good book. It talks about political assassinations, good or bad, effective or not effective, moral or immoral. Lots of discussion about the right and wrong of assassinations in particular, but killing people in general. You know, you see it on TV all the time. People are always getting killed in TV shows, everywhere, movies, but nobody gives it a second thought. So this book talks about the morality of it, in addition to the techniques and the effectiveness and what happens afterwards. And we reanalyze things like the Lincoln assassination and Caesar's assassination. I mean, did they work out or not? Really? So anyway, it's a good book on Amazon.
All right, everyone. So we got the link down there.
End of commercial.
So we got the link down there down below, and we got to give Doug the floor to promote whatever he's got going on because he's so gracious with his time with us. So first question, there's a little bit of, you probably are unaware of it, but there's a little bit of Doug Casey melodrama that I saw on Twitter today. And what it was, I won't say any names. So you did an interview pretty recently, and it was spun in the title to say that Doug Casey says, don't buy gold. And that's how it was positioned. I saw it in my newsfeed. And when I saw it in my newsfeed, I was like, I just talked to Doug and he told me he's all in on mining. This is weird. So I clicked into it and it was not about that really at all. And it was about you talking about how you're just not buying physical ounces right now because you bought so much of you bought your gold at 35 bucks, all these prices that people like me are like, can you believe it? First time I bought it was 1,500 bucks. And so it was a little bit, then I saw someone that is a regular that makes the rounds that was saying how you're stupid for saying that and that not to buy it. And I commented and I said, did you even listen to the video? That was a misleading title. He did not say that at all. I just had him on my show and he said he's, quote, all in on miners. And the guy got really upset and blocked me because of it. And so a little bit of Doug Casey melodrama. But my point is, are you not buying gold now? Talking about assassinating, the price is getting assassinated right now. Is it true that you're leaving the gold industry forever?
Look, gold is the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability. And in a world as unstable and overloaded with debt as the one we have today, yes, you want to buy gold. And look, I've been buying gold pretty consistently. Whenever I've had a few nickels and dimes that I find between the cushions of the couch, I've always bought gold. So I have a lot now. Frankly, it's shocking. But gold is very, very important, and I'll keep buying more. What are you supposed to do with your fiat currency? What are you supposed to do with paper dollars? Okay. I don't need another house, don't need another car. I've got most everything I want. So what do you do with capital that rolls in? I buy gold. Now, as a speculation, this is something different. I'm all in on gold mining stocks. There are other kinds of stocks now that are very cheap and very interesting. Like, for instance, shipping companies, those big boats, the super tankers, this type of thing. They're really, really cheap, the companies that own them. Okay, that's a great speculation right now. And oil producing companies, really interesting speculation. A lot of them have great dividends. They've really gotten beaten up tremendously. Yeah, I'm interested in those too. And there's some other things, but as a general rule, the best speculation right now is gold mining stocks. They're really, really cheap, and they've got 10-to-1 upside potential over the next few years, much more than gold itself. You buy gold for safety, for prudence, for insurance.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. If you only read the headlines, you would have got a little worried. So, everyone's freaking out, when the price goes down, and at least on the Twitter sphere. And then there's the talks. Bitcoin's been going up, so then people say gold is officially done. It's done. Everyone's moving into Bitcoin. Gold is done. And what do you think about the sell-off? Is this the end of the gold run? Is gold over?
Well, look, first of all, I don't have a Twitter account.
I know you don't. That's why I'm updating you on what's happening.
I appreciate that. I don't know what people might be saying, and I don't care. It's Twitter is worse than reading daily headlines on CNN or the Washington Post. So the only reason to even watch the media, and Twitter's part of the media, I guess, is to get some idea what other people think they're thinking and think is reality. It's not a reflection of reality. It's what people think is reality. So that's the only reason to keep.
And the perception right now for a lot of people is they're really afraid. Everything's starting to go up, but gold's been going down. What's going on, and does this change your assessment? It's just
No, it doesn't at all. Frankly, within the next few years, I expect to see a wholesale panic into gold as people are trying to get out of fiat dollars. These people that, look, first of all, I'm not a trader. Some people are very good traders, okay? They watch the screens and they draw lines on the charts, and they're psychologically oriented towards trading, but that's very few people. Very few people can be good traders. It's a certain psychological type. I'm not interested in even trying to be a trader. I am interested in being a speculator, however, which is very different. People confuse those two things. A speculator is somebody that takes advantage of politically caused distortions in the marketplace. And once again, gold is being set up as being a great speculation. Not as great as it was back in 1971 when it was controlled by the government at $35 an ounce for 40 years, but pretty good. Why do I say that? Because in the last decade, they've created trillions of new fiat dollars. And now that Biden's elected, and I presume he's going to be put into the presidency, although there's some question about that, he's already said that they plan on creating 3.4 trillion new dollars to pass out to people in the US. So with all that funny money floating around, it just about guarantees gold is going to go higher. And it also guarantees, practically, I think, that there's going to be a bubble in gold mining stocks. So there you have it. That's the argument in brief.
Yeah, so it's something that I think people that haven't been around, as long as you, then they see it go down, and most people towards any investment, all they do is look at the price. So there's a big emotional reaction, and there's a lot of headlines that say gold's done, is gold over, Bitcoin destroyed gold. And so when
you hear those things, that's more often a sign that the opposite is happening. The fact that everybody's afraid, everybody wants to get out of it. That's when you buy. You don't buy when everybody's saying, oh, this is great, it's going up. Everybody, okay? This is what being a contrarian is about. Everybody likes to think they're a contrarian, but in practice, it's quite hard because you've got to do the opposite of what the mob does. And that's hard to do, actually. I mean, listen, your own psychology is the biggest enemy you have in the market. So actually, when you think something and it's emotional, try to do the opposite of what your own psychology is telling you.
That's really good. And do you think that that's a big, like you're kind of, you're super, I mean, you're telling me off air, your other property in Aspen, you divided it into 5 lots and they're each 70 acres. And in my head, I'm like, what does he have? Like 350 acres of a ranch in Aspen? I mean, that's gotta be, I don't even want to speculate, no pun intended, on what that is. And you got 1,000 acres in Uruguay. You're a legend. You're very, 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 very successful. And there's a lot of other people that go on a lot of these shows and they talk about gold and silver, and like almost nobody is really done as well as you have in commodities and being a speculator. Very few people will say. And but other people saw they say the same things, they saw the same trends, maybe they're around. I mean, what made you so much more successful than so many people? This guy that was commenting on it, that goes on these shows, he was trying to trash you. And I was just objectively like telling him he didn't say that. And I realized the guy obviously had a confirmation bias where he was mad at you or jealous about you or whatever. Then he saw this misleading headline and went to the extreme. And my point is, there's a lot of people that do these rounds on these shows, but nobody's really done it. I mean, like, you're really, really successful. What made you do it? Is it that you didn't react to emotions, so you were able to stay in longer during bull markets, and these bull markets go woo, 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 and you always think it's done, and then so people sell off, but you waited? I mean, what made you? What's the thing that I need to know, and the people listening to this channel that are maybe in their first time in this market or their second time in this market, and they invested a large sum and they're like, holy crap, it's going down again, and they're getting worried and they want to be successful like Doug. They see this as the opportunity.
Okay, look, if you bought gold in the early 70s when it was $35, $40, $50 an ounce, it was clearly a one-way street. Then it ran up to $850 an ounce back in 1980, okay? And then it went down to as low as $250 an ounce in 2001. Here's something interesting. It's that in 2001, when it hit about 255 or something like that, it was actually cheaper in real terms than it was in 1971 at $35 an ounce. Why? Because in the intervening years, from 1971 to 2001, 30 years, the dollar had lost about 3/4 of its value or more. So it was actually cheaper in real terms in 2001 than it was in 1971.
Huh.
So it's a mistake to always look at things in terms of the dollar, because the dollar itself is a floating abstraction. It's backed by nothing. It's being created by the trillions. It's basically going to be destroyed by its issuer, the US government. It's the unsecured liability of a basically bankrupt government. It's hard to think of the US government as being bankrupt, richest country in the world, but that's the case. So look, I've always treated gold not as a speculation, but as a savings vehicle, just as a way to salt away capital in a form that I can't get my hands on it and piss it away on something foolish on the spur of the moment, okay? It goes into the safe deposit box or the safest place I can think of, and it just stays there. It's a savings vehicle, okay? So
how about the mining stocks?
Very different. Mining itself is about the worst business in the world. Mining stocks are generally burning matches. There are about 2,000 companies in the world that say they're in the gold mining business, okay? About 90% of them are complete crap. They don't have any gold except in the name on their share certificate. I mean, they hope to have gold, they're looking for it, but it's actually a genuine fact that when a prospector finds a showing of gold, and perhaps a rock that has a fleck of gold in it, or he's wandering around and taking stream sediment samples just because the gold concentrates, or water, it's placer mining, and find a showing of gold. Oh, okay, where'd this gold come from? And I'll tie up the place upstream that might be the mother lode, the hard rock lode for it. About 1 out of 1,000 of these things turn into something that might be a mine. It's a real long shot business. So most gold stocks, even if they have the goods, are burning matches. And actually much more important than finding the deposit itself are the people that run the company. You know, I put together a list of 9 things you should look for when you're speculating in gold stocks. And it applies to most businesses. But what are the 9 things before you buy any stock you should look at? Number 1 on the list is people. Who are the people that are running this company? It's more important than the other 8 things put together, because good people can take a zero shell and turn it into a world beater. Bad people can take the treasure of Sierra Madre and turn a wet dream into a disaster. So people's number 1. Then you look at the property. Number 2, you need some knowledge about geology and mining engineering and so forth about that. Financing, spelled with a PH. Do they have the money? Can they get the money? Do they know how to spend the money? Promotion. Can these people tell their story and get people to buy their stock, to raise capital? Because mining consumes money. I mean, from the time you find a deposit until the time that maybe it becomes a mine, in today's world, it takes 10 years. I mean, it's not like the old days where you find a vein, you mine it, you're in business the next month. It's not like that anymore. It's highly capital intensive, regulation intensive business, which leads to politics. Where is this mine or this deposit located? Is it in a place that after you go through all the trouble of building the mine, they're basically going to steal it from you? Probably not directly, but by imposing royalties, imposing taxes. When will the native groups that claim that, you know, their God lives on your deposit going to come in and try to shake you down? Listen, mining is a horrible business. It's why Warren Buffett, until very recently, has never invested in mining. But from time to time, it's the best possible place to be, because all the gold mining stocks in the world don't even add up to a rounding error on the value of the general market. They're very, very volatile. And when the public gets the bit in its teeth and decides, for whatever reason, gold's going up, gotta buy gold, it's like trying to get the contents of Hoover Dam through a garden hose. They're explosive. And I'm telling you that now is the time to buy them. They're very, very cheap relative to everything else, the mining stocks. And the next question you're probably going to ask, Jake, I'll anticipate you if I may, is, well, why? I mean, why don't people buy these things? And the reason is because Warren Buffett says that gold is a pet rock. And, you know, he says things like, why take it out of the ground in South Africa to put it back in the ground in a vault in New York? You know, things like that. They don't understand economics. They don't understand monetary theory. They don't understand history. So the fund managers don't buy gold stocks. They don't talk about them. They're not interested in them. They're underowned. And that's wonderful, because when that psychology changes, as it has a number of times in the last 50 years since gold was demonetized, as they say, these things explode. And then they go back to where they started from again. But I can go on about this, but I don't know if this conversation is supposed to be about gold mining stocks or other stuff. So
No, that's what I want. I mean, first of all, I wanted to have you on to talk. When I ask gold, I include the mining stocks in the directional conversation because obviously that's a vehicle a lot of people use. I own a lot of physical gold, a lot of physical silver, and then I have, my miners, which I know when physical gold's down, I know they're going to be down a lot more. When gold goes up, I know they're going to go up a lot more. But I wanted to start that way, maybe more than I normally would, just because of the overall downward trend in the last in trading sideways the last 4 months for the miners and also for the metals, to make sure for listeners and anyone that's is getting deceived with headlines, to make sure you were still bullish, and that this is one of those times every 10 years or so in history where even the dogs run, and this looks like a time where that shitty business is worth being in right now.
That's very accurate.
All right, deal. So, all right, we're good to go there. So all the gold and silver bugs, hit the like button. So next question, Doug, where do we go from here? I had Robert Kiyosaki on, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad guy. I interviewed him yesterday, and he thinks we're going to socialism. And he had a lot of strong words to say. I'm going to have to put a parent advisory warning on that video. But what do you think's going to happen here in 2021? We're coming to the end of the year, and all likelihood, it seems now that it seems like a Biden win. And he said 3.5 trillion. I can't imagine the establishment Republicans are not going to let him do that. What do you think is going to happen? All that we've got stimulus, the overall year. Where do you think we're going?
Well, look, the state has been growing in the United States. It's built on a foundation of coercion. Like Mao Tse-tung said, the power of the state comes out of the barrel of a gun. It's not about, gentle and polite democracy. We don't have a democracy to start with. And I don't believe in democracy as a form of government. To back that up, we can have another conversation about this thing about we got to save our democracy. Well, you don't have a democracy. And even if you did, democracy isn't really a good thing. It's vastly overrated. It's really just a method of electing your new rulers at best. But at this point, the US government, which is based on force, there's no voluntarism about it. I mean, they say you pay your taxes voluntarily, as the IRS says it. It's not. They hold a gun to your head, and if you don't give them what they want, they put you in jail. But it's not just about what the government does to you from the point of view of taking your money in taxes. If you keep using their currency, they'll inflate it out of existence. They're constantly telling you what you can do and can't do in the way of regulations, which makes it very hard to be an entrepreneur. Your dealings with your lawyers are more important than your dealings with your scientists and engineers and constructors if you have a business. I mean, in the mining business, you spend as much on lawyers these days as you do on geologists and mining engineers. It's absolutely shameful. Every business is becoming that way. So I believe that we're on the cusp of what I call the Greater Depression. It's going to be much more serious and much longer lasting and much different from what we went through from 1929 to 1946. So that's the kind of environment we're looking at. And everything that the Biden administration promises to do almost guarantees a serious economic disaster from their creating lots of money and giving it to God knows who. You know, simple arithmetic. Let's suppose Biden makes good on his promise to create 3.4 million, trillion more currency units and distribute them. Let's say there's 300 million people in the US. Supposing that you were going to divide that 3.4 trillion among the 300 million inhabitants of the country, that would be sometimes in between $10,000 and $12,000 for every individual in the country, men, women, and babies, okay?
Wow.
But we're not gonna see that. That's $50,000 a family. I don't even know if that includes, you know, illegal aliens that wandered across the border. Are they gonna get their share of that too? They're gonna get free medical. I don't know, I suppose they will. But they're not gonna see anything like that. They're gonna have a few table scraps. So who's going to get this 3.4 million that's being created? Well, it's going to go to failing banks, failing insurance companies, failing corporations, public works projects, building bridges to nowhere and God knows what else. And the average guy gets some table scraps. Meanwhile, the increase in the amount of the money supply, maybe that means the stock market will double from here. Eventually, it's going to mean that retail prices are going to skyrocket. So look, the Greater Depression is really serious, and it's going to be, well, we're on the cusp of it right now. I mean, I don't know, what do you make of these videos that you see of lines miles long in Dallas and I don't know what other cities of cars going to food banks, where people that are driving $50,000 and $70,000 pickup trucks and SUVs, I suppose they're leased, going to pick up food from a food bank. This is rather strange, don't you think?
Yeah, so I lived in Maui for quite a number of years, and we just left. My wife and I, she was pregnant, and when everything started happening with the virus, we left and we went to California where we felt a little bit more stable, and then we realized that was a bad mistake. So we just moved to Utah 3 weeks ago, right before the lockdowns. And so I've been looking back at Maui particularly, which 2 months ago it had over it for its counties. So the island of Maui is a county in Hawaii. So it's Maui County. So Maui County has unemployment rate of 45%. My guess is it's higher now. 45%. And I watched a video of this dude driving with a GoPro through the food bank. Dude, I mean, it gives me chills right now. I mean, it had to have been half the island. I mean, it's already has the worst education system in America. It already has one of the lowest employment opportunities if it isn't for hospitality. You shut the hospitality down. And I look at this and I'm like, nobody realizes what's really happening. People actually believe that you're going to get a virus and everything's going to be fine. All over the country. I mean, so 75% of Americans before this, they lived paycheck to paycheck, right? And the average American can't come up with $400 for an emergency. The average family makes $60K a year. You already can't live off $60K a year, as evidenced by the fact that 75% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. This was before this happened. And so you look at it and you go, people are not, they're totally underestimating the fact that you haven't been able to evict renters and you haven't gotten foreclosed upon. There are millions of people that are 8 months behind on their mortgage, not 2 months behind. They're 8 months behind on their mortgage right now. And they were waiting for a stimulus check that didn't get. So they've just been swiping their credit card. And they're at the point where they're not even paying off the minimum balance right now. They're just letting it ride. And it's very disturbing to think about it. So people don't want to think about it. They don't want to go look at how bad, because it's really disturbing. And So I don't know where we go from here. My thoughts are that the Greater Depression looks more, when you say the word, sometimes people have the connotation that it's a very long-term deflationary, crazy shock. I think that they're going to try to, do another wealth bubble and make all the middle class people think everything's fine that still have their jobs and their houses. And they try to kickstart the wheels, and basically that turns into the stock market going higher and higher and higher, while we don't solve this. And so that's kind of my long-winded answer. I don't think it's good. The least of my worries are really about gold and silver in my mining stocks. I put a lot of money into mining stocks. You don't know that much about me, but I've actually written 3 books too. I published my first one. I dropped out of college. I backpacked around the world, and then I sold my book out of the trunk of my car, and I sold 20,000 copies when I was 21. And so Penguin Random House gave me a book deal, and I had published a few with them, and I built my online brand.
What was the name of the book?
The first one was called Into the Wind. My 6-month journey wandering the world for life's purpose. And it starts, the first sentence is me raising my hand in economics class, asking the professor why we can't audit the Federal Reserve. And that's how it starts. And it's kind of spiritual too.
That's fantastic. And I don't know if you're aware of the fact that I have that in 1980, a long time ago, obviously, when my second book, Priceless Investing, was #1 on the New York Times list. It was there for, I think, 29 weeks. I was on the Phil Donahue show. Phil Donahue was the Oprah Winfrey of that era. And one of the things that made the audience boo me, they generally liked me, but there were 2 things that made them boo me. One was that I said I wasn't voting in the next day's election. And I explained why. I got as far as explaining 3 of the 5 reasons I wasn't voting before they just booed, and Phil changed the subject of conversation. The other reason they booed me is I said that I was sorry that I'd misallocated 4 years of my time and a bunch of money going to college. And if I'd had good counsel in high school, I would have done what you did. So congratulations, Jay. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's funny. And I share that all just because you kind of put the question back on me. Because so I'd done well, and I built everything online, and, I got 4 or 5 people that work for me. And, I never invested any of my money because I didn't believe this system. And so I had, over 7 figures sitting in a checking account, and all my focus is on my business, get freedom, get freedom. And then I, circled back to all this stuff. And, I started buying heavy gold and heavy silver. And then I realized there's a lot of opportunity in the miners. And I was like, man, I probably have enough capital where this might be one of those times in history where I could have a serious slingshot, and basically buy my freedom over the next couple years. And that was what brought me into this and why I wanted to do these interviews. But long story long, they're the least of my worries. When I've never bought, I put a lot of my 7 figures into gold and silver and into miners. And so it scares me seeing them go down. It's my first time in the rodeo, but it's still the least of my worries because I don't think people understand how bad most of America has it right now. And I don't know what the solution is. I've been harping to everybody to start an online business, more than buy an ounce of gold or more than buy a Bitcoin or more than silver, because you need something that's going to spit you out cash flow, especially something where you don't have a boss or a company that'll fire you for your political views or will lock you in your house and quit giving you money, and so I think a wealth creation vehicle, a brand like you have. What else do you think people can do? And I know I just I normally don't talk that much, but I'm in the conversation of books and you asking me the question.
I'm really pleased to hear this, because how old are you?
29.
That's great. I suspect only a small percentage of the people in your generation feel that way. Is that correct or not? What do you think?
Yeah, I think people are awake, but I think people feel powerless in my generation. And I think that there's you know, a big grab of socialism as well. But I think that it's people that understand a lot of the things we talk about, but then their vehicle is just wrong. They're just like, well, it's so screwed and the solution's socialism. And that's what happens when you have vulnerable people. You can convince them of something that takes them out of rational thought and into emotions. And I think that's what's happening. But I do think people are waking up. I think a lot of, you know, people are in, you know, they're in Bitcoin and they're awake. And so I think a little bit, but I mean, I can't say that I'm optimistic about the amount of people that are, I think people are really sweeping what's happening under the rug. So, I mean, that's why I started this channel was I put so much money in. I was like, I can't help everybody. I've just got to see as quickly as I can to try to get my net worth up to 8 figures, and I can cash out of the game and get a farm like you and, you know, get on my livestock, my water, my greenhouse, my guns, my gold, my silver, and, you know, help everyone I can. And that's really what I believe is happening. So, I mean, I'm definitely someone that's really, there's probably people that interview you that really aren't in the full camp of it getting bad that you are. But I just don't know. Do you think we head to more an inflationary style situation, or what do you think the Greater Depression looks like, you know, in a more detail?
Not much doubt in my mind that it's going to be inflationary in nature, because unless they keep printing up money, the whole 100-story house of cards is going to collapse. So they've got to try to keep propping it up and building it higher, which means that when it eventually does collapse, it's going to make an even bigger mess than if it collapsed now. If it collapses 5 years from now, I think this is the big one we're looking at now, quite frankly. But listen, I'm pessimistic. I wrote an article about 3 months ago that gave the 6 reasons why I thought that Biden was going to win. And they included things like the demographics of this country. About 39% is the number I've seen of adult Americans have gone to college. The problem with that is that, and I've been a trustee of 2 separate colleges myself, so I'm speaking firsthand, not just from statistics that you read places, that most, 80, 90%, a huge number of the people that are teaching in colleges, other than mathematics and physics perhaps, are Marxist. They're socialist leaning, they're collectivists, they're statists. And the problem is when an 18-year-old kid goes to college, he's basically got a tabula rasa. He's got some notions he's picked up here and there, but he's going to college to get knowledge, and he listens to an authoritative person lecture at him, and these things just, you know, come into your brain and they're hard to get out of you. It's like learning to ride a horse. If you don't have proper lessons, you pick up bad habits, and it's 10 times harder to get rid of the bad habits than it is to learn to ride the horse correctly. It's the same thing with learning economics or history or anything. So we've had several generations of Americans that have been totally corrupted by their educational experience. They believe these things because they've been told them by authority figures, they've been told them by the media, they've been told them by politicians. Their friends all believe it. I mean, you don't want to argue with your friends about politics. That's a great way to lose your friends. So yeah, the meme of socialism is ingrained in the US. People now believe the government should do this, the government should do that. The whole thing's become politicized. So that's just one of the 6 reasons. The big one, of course, is I think that the Democrats cheated much more effectively than the Republicans did. And of course, the consequences of that are going to be these 73 million Trumpers that voted feel, probably correctly, that they were cheated out of the election. And when Beto O'Rourke, who I think is going to be the gun czar, tries to take their guns away through taxes or whatever, I don't know where that's going to end. It could get violent, and we could be looking at an actual civil war or something like a civil war in the US. But it could get very violent, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it's why I didn't own I never trusted the stock market because I had this, awakening when I was 19. And so I put all my stuff into physical metals. But then I realized, there's a real good opportunity with these miners and it's worth, you know, biting off a bigger bullet right now because of the multiplier effect. And it's really because I realize seven figures isn't that much money. I mean, you really need to get closer to the eight-figure mark with how expensive being alive is, especially if you have a family. But when I look at it all, that's something that makes me want to head to the hills. Is the country's so divided. I know you've talked about seceding. I think it in my head, but I hate to even say it because you immediately no one will even listen to you. But it seems like a good answer. But I guess in the interim, if we keep it on finances, so let's say, we get a Biden administration and, some people think it's going full blown socialism. Some of the more moderates say he'll keep the socialists out of it. He'll keep all them out. Who knows? I'm really like, if somebody argues that, I'm like, who knows? We'll see. But what I wonder, I can't see any scenario where they don't print more money because, like you said, the whole system will literally collapse. And it's bad for the elites at that level too, because then you have a whole society in total anarchy and what they want is control. So it's printing it away.
I agree with you totally. There's only one cavil I would have. Total anarchy. Incorrect. Total chaos. For many years, I've been an anarchist, and people have a mistaken understanding of what an anarchist is. An anarchist is simply one that doesn't believe in rulers, but we believe in peace and freedom. And anarchists aren't people that wear black capes and run around with little round bombs destroying things. So people often confuse and conflate the word anarchy with chaos.
Okay, well then I'm on the same page. I'm on the same page as you. So we'll call it chaos. And I have the same views as you. But let's say, what do you think has to happen? Everyone warns of inflation, and there's monetary inflation, and then there's price inflation. And we need velocity, right, for significant price inflation or this hyperinflation. I mean, there's a lot of people that say it's not happening and it hasn't happened and it just goes into the financial assets. Do you think that we go back to a semblance of quote unquote normalcy where they tell everyone their vaccine works and they give everyone money to start spending? Or do you think that they keep these lockdowns so it kind of keeps us slow on money velocity and it just pumps the stock market? I mean, what do you think? Nobody knows, but when you're in your head, how are you playing out the scenarios for what might occur with the money printing and the inflation and how a first year with a Biden presidency might look? Do people think quote unquote everything's okay? Or is there another everything's selling off, run to the hills? What do you think it looks like?
Look, all this government intervention, which is occurring in lots of areas, in lots of ways, is causing huge distortions and causing huge misallocations of capital in the society. It's a very simple example. Let's suppose that the government, an example I used to use, put $10,000 in everybody's bank account tomorrow morning. Well, actually, they're doing that. But what would happen? Well, among other things, the price of beef might skyrocket because people that were living on rice and beans before say, hey, I can afford filet mignon. I can afford steak right now. So what happens? Price of beef skyrockets, which has all kinds of effects as to what farmers do and so forth. And the price of rice and beans collapses. Nobody wants to eat that stuff anymore when they can have steak because of what the government did. They're not richer, but they think they're richer. So, but after that wears, so this is creating a distortion in the marketplace. The good news is a speculator can take advantage of it. Bad news is when people find out that they're not as rich as they think they are, hey, there's no rice and beans. It hasn't been profitable for their farmers to grow them. They've been growing beef, which nobody can afford. And now the beef farmers go, bankrupt and the rice and beans farmers are already bankrupt. This is the kind of, I hope I'm being clear, this 60-second example, but this is one of 1,000 things like that that happens when the government gets involved in this. So yeah, we're guaranteed a depression. And one of the few reasons I can think of that the US won't start coming apart at the seams, because we have many different cultures in this country. The US has become a multicultural domestic empire at this point. It's not the place it used to be, even 50 years ago, from that point of view, when everybody kind of shared the same ideals, the same traditions, same holidays, this type of, not the case anymore. I think the only thing that can save the country from flying apart at the seams is a major war, not a sport war like Iraq or Afghanistan, but a real war with big game like China. And then Americans would probably unite, but World War III is going to be much more disastrous than World War II was. So there's no way out of this thing. We have to go to the meat grinder before.
So the people that are privy enough on that would, people that are really objective enough would agree, and that historically that's what tends to happen. But you said China and, Biden has, these ties. Where do you think a war, Trump seemed to be the only one that was able to, keep his pants on, so to speak. But, we got, obviously the Biden-Obama administration had their many covert wars, and they were trigger happy with the drone strikes and Syria and Libya and those little types of things. But you're saying in order to really pull everybody in and create this distraction and all these things, you need a big one. If you were to speculate, would you actually think that though the communist regime and the political establishment seem to be on the same par, that you seem to be on the same team together, you think that they would still, do you think that's the highest likelihood? If you had to speculate on or put down $100 on one country, what would you guess?
Yeah, every government thinks first things first. And among the first things is holding the country together. That's what's going to be on Biden and his people's mind. And a war is a great way to unite the country. Incidentally, I don't believe in uniting the country, because then you're united, usually going in the wrong direction following these people.
Right.
So, no, I think the fact that Biden and his family have probably taken lots of bribes from China, that's small potatoes. No, they'll be quite happy to start a war. It'll be very stupid, because starting a war where you have to go to the other side of the world to fight a lot of it, we could talk about the nature of World War III also, and how it's going to be very different from World War II. But yeah, I'd say the chances of that happening are very high. All you have to do is replay those so-called debates between those 20 idiots that were competing for the Democratic nomination and listen to the things that they're saying. It's really scary, because these people now control the country. And I say that not as a fan of Trump. I like the fact that Trump is a cultural conservative, but other than that, he's done so many, and I like the fact that he's tried. It's very hard to get the US out of these forever wars and these little dog shit countries where it has no business. So I approve of the cultural conservatism. I approve of the fact that he wants to bring the troops home. But other than that, he's making a lot of mistakes. So it's not that I support Trump. It's that it's almost anybody but these crazy Democrats that have taken over the Democratic Party, which has been going in the wrong direction ever since Grover Cleveland, who most people don't even know as a president, but that's another story. But Jake, I think we might have been talking too long already. So let's do this again sometime, perhaps.
Yeah.